Well, everyone, thank you very much, Kim Pate, for coming back on to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies today, and talk about the federal budget. And what was missed in there was the question of the day was the Canada Disability benefit that was promised. So many were so disappointed with hearing they've been left out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really disappointing to see that it wasn't in the budget, and I think we should, it would be great for everybody to be writing to the Prime Minister's office and urging that we see something within the next 30 days that be announced, because there needs to be something soon.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't need a 3-year study to kind of figure that out. And people are already suffering. I would not want to see what would happen 3 years from now.
Exactly.
Could you give Kim? Could you give everyone like an update on how the bill, the GLBI, how the bill is proceeding through Senate?
Well, at this stage, we've been receiving, as you know, lots of folks sending things in. I don't know who started it, but someone started a bit of a campaign saying that what Leah and I are doing with the bill to develop a framework for a guaranteed livable basic income in Canada, that we were actually planning to cut every other program. Anybody who knows either Leah or me would know that couldn't be further from the truth, that the opposite is true. In fact, we would be planning to develop supports and services, healthcare, education, obviously disability benefits, as well as pharmacare, dental care, and none of that would be done by taking away old age security or disability benefits, inadequate as they are now. So, it's unfortunate that folks got focused on that, and you can understand if someone tells you that people were understandably upset, even though there was no basis in reality for that.
Yeah, exactly. It just causes a lot more confusion of what's going on, and I'm glad that you set that straight of so people get a better idea of what's going on with that. I mean, I think obviously at the end of the day, a lot of people they just they want the financial security, that knowing that they're going to be able to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads and pay for their medications. And I think it's really exciting, to hear about the dental, the universal dental program and the fair pharmacare. That's quite exciting, definitely, to see that going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's great that that's been earmarked, and that the NDP has been part of pushing that as part of their confidence and supply agreement with the government. But I think we also need to see a push to make sure that some of these other measures don't continue to be ignored by the government.
Yeah, exactly. They have to be. Have to be held accountable at the same time, right? To kind of keep things on track, so that it's not kind of sidestepped of we'll get to it. And I mean, it's obviously it's a priority, and it's something that they've put in there, and I think it's so important that Canadians need to kind of see that and look forward to knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that kind of goes with the with the GLBI too, and that is great. And I mean, it was so disappointed though with the federal government, say with their federal budget came out and nothing in there. And I mean, honestly, I wasn't really surprised. I was disappointed myself, but I figured that they would probably throw a curveball and just not include that in. I mean, I figured maybe something, but nothing that completely, they didn't even talk about it. There was pages and pages of disability related stuff about accessibility, about employment, about getting them all jobs, but not everybody can actually work. I mean, they have, so, and that's the other part, and I think a lot of people are really hurt. And I've seen Twitter just blowing up since after the budget came out, and there's been some news stories of people talking about it. And yeah, it's so important to keep that dialogue going, for sure.
well, talking about Twitter blowing up, just before we launched the show, Brent knows this. We had a little bit of a tweet storm happen this morning, and there are some PWD advocates out there. I'm part of a Facebook page. It's the BC Disability Caucus, and there are some on there that are concerned that the Canada Disability Benefit is only being rolled out to deny the disabled their CRPD rights, and it's just used as a stall tactic, and the person that runs it, the main administrator for the page, is really concerned about that, and I understand that, but at the same time, I do think that there's not enough known about the. There's not enough known about the Canada Disability Benefit right now, so who's to know if it's possible that more rights-based things can be rolled into the benefit. But I just want to hear your take on it. If about those concerns, what's your take on it?
Well, I think given how much government support has shrunk for some of the most marginalized folks in this country, I'm not surprised to hear skepticism from people. And, I think that's legitimate, because the reality is we've had, decades of austerity measures, quote unquote, under the guise of, cutting back to cut deficits and the like. And the reality is it often seems to be those who have don't have the most privilege, power, resources, and therefore public voice who run the day. And, for obvious reasons, that's not people living in poverty. That's not often people with disabilities. And we saw the same thing, quite frankly, with the medical assistance in dying discussions. The fact that the opportunity for people to access MAID was advanced in the absence of benefits like this and others being put in place, and the honoring of the international agreements that have been brought about. And so I think the fact that the UN Declaration and the support for people with disabilities is lagging is a huge problem. And I certainly, part of those who are trying to raise this issue and raise the concerns. I think the minister herself is part of who's trying to raise those concerns. And it's a challenge when you have a cabinet that is predominantly people who are relatively well off and really can't even contemplate how little in terms of financial resources, not to mention all the other lack of supports that people have to survive. I think sometimes they think we make it up. You can't make up this stuff. With the fact that even without disabilities, the fact that people working for minimum wage in this country, in 90% of the communities cannot afford, people working full-time at minimum wage cannot afford to rent an apartment, tells you something about how much worse it is for people who can't work, or people who are struggling with other challenges that require other supports, whether it's medical supports, physical or pharmacare supports. Those are all realities that don't even get factored into it too often. And so I think it behooves those of us who are doing this work to keep trying to get that information out. And so hence the reason I'm very grateful to Brent and all of you for the work you do to keep pushing on these issues. And those of us who are working in alliance and particularly those of us like me in positions of relative privilege have a responsibility to keep reminding people. I know one of my colleagues said last week to me, "Aren't you getting tired? We know what you're going to say when you stand up." And I said, until we do something different, I'll keep saying it. And there's little else that I can do at this point to try and sway, besides we've got the legislation, we've got a motion on the floor, we've got legislation in the House of Commons through Leah's bill, and we will keep pushing. And if nothing else, eventually, I am confident we'll get something. I am extremely concerned about who's being left behind in the meantime. You said it better than I. We don't need another study. We need action. I do think we have a long way to go still to, we say we have equality. Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, our Human Rights Act, says that all people are equal before the law. But I don't need to tell any of you that the practice is very different from that. And the stigma that attaches, whether it's to anybody who can't work, the presumption is that they won't, that they choose not to work, as though that is a judgment. Even if that is true, there's no interrogation of why. And so if it's someone who has disabling health, mental health, other kinds of disabilities that preclude them from doing usual jobs, or employers won't accommodate those differences in abilities, or they have illness issues, or are caregiving themselves, or are all out to ensure that their basic needs are met. Now I'm sounding like I'm judging as well. I am judging, actually, that we don't value lives equally. And in order to do that, we have to shore up the opportunities for people to be full participants in society. And you don't do that when you don't fund people adequately. And as was just said earlier, I mean, there are numerous ways that we could find the resources without raising personal income taxes, which is the usual go-to that people say, oh, you're just going to raise the taxes. Personally, I'm happy to pay taxes on the basis that we get programs. But many people who make a whole lot more money than certainly all of us pay a lot of money to have their money hidden offshore, and they don't pay any income tax. And as one of my colleagues whose focus is that, he's not particularly interested in guaranteed livable income or any of these issues, but he's interested in fair taxation. And he said, people who live here, who enjoy profits here and send their money offshore and so they don't have to pay taxes, I think that's a travesty. Well, I agree with him. And he said to me not long ago, a couple of months ago, he said, Kim, if we had all of those taxes, I am pretty sure it could pay for the programs you want and more. And he's experienced and has expertise in this area, not me, but I trust that that's no doubt true. I mean, the fact that we are a money laundering capital for the world is horrendous. The fact that people get away with not paying taxes, not paying their fair share, that we treat some people in incredibly privileged ways and then jettison others into literally as though they are not worth any kind of support is unconscionable. And our social assistance schemes keep people entrenched in poverty because that if you work a certain amount in some provinces, like here in Ontario, you only have to work, I think it's $200 now, and then everything starts to get clawed back. Well, that's the disincentive to work. It's not a guaranteed livable income. It's the current social assistance schemes that are disincentives to work and keep people trapped in poverty, because if you're trying to work and you make more than that, it's clawed back. You could then become ineligible for the pharmacare and dental care initiatives, inadequate as they are, because we know they don't provide the same quality of care. And we know, I was just talking to a dentist yesterday about this, saying, what's the dental care program going to do? And he's sending me a bunch of information because he said, Kim, if they don't fund it, the problem will be getting dentists to do it, because right now they only fund at half the rate anybody who comes who's on social assistance. And so because it's actually costing them to take some folks who are subsidized, many dentists refuse to take them. And I think that's unconscionable.